Babylon 5 only ever did one proper time travel adventure. It was revolutionary. It proved the show could take big swings, setting up epic stories spanning multiple seasons. But a switch in lead character nearly derailed everything they were working towards. Let me tell you the story of how time travel nearly broke Babylon 5, but ended up making it better than ever.
Ensign, engage.
The 90s TV landscape was very different compared to today. Most shows were episodic. Take Star Trek The Next Generation. The crew arrive at a planet, they have an adventure, and it all neatly wraps up 45 minutes later, with no lasting consequences. You could dive in at Season 2 or Season 5, and the characters in the situation would be pretty much the same.
No one here is exactly what he appears. Not Molari, not Delenn, not Sinclair.
Babylon 5 promised to change all that. Series creator J. Michael Straczynski said he'd laid out a 5-year story arc. But that wasn't obvious from B5's early episodes. These were mostly self-contained. They established lore about B5's universe and fleshed out the characters, but to many it didn't seem like the show was doing anything remarkably different. That was until Babylon Squared, the show's 20th episode. Now B5 was really good at hiding secrets in plain sight. The mystery of the station's predecessor, Babylon 4, was set up way back in the show's pilot.
Why is it called Babylon 5?
Babylons 1, 2, and 3 were sabotaged and destroyed. Number 4 vanished without a trace 24 hours after becoming operational. To this day, no one knows what happened to it.
In Babylon Squared, B4 reappears, and Commander Sinclair and his team have to go and investigate. They find the station in chaos. Time is in flux, and we get a flash forward to a future event. Sinclair finds himself back on Babylon 5, as he and Garibaldi make a last stand against an unknown enemy.
Jeff, it's okay! I finally understand! It's the moment I was born for! Now go!
Then we go back to Babylon 4, where they've captured an alien named Zathras. He initially appears to recognize Sinclair, but then thinks better of it. Zathras explains that he's stealing the station to be a base of operations in a great war between light and darkness.
Need place. Place to gather, to fight, to organize.
You need Babylon 4 as a base of operations in a war, is that it?
He tells them he's working for a mysterious person he calls the One.
We live for the One. We would die for the One.
Then an unknown figure in a blue spacesuit appears.
It is the One.
Sinclair reaches out to touch him, but is pushed away by an unknown force. The station is evacuated, but Zathras is trapped under a falling pillar. Sinclair tries to help, but is told big things are in store for him.
Listen to Zathras. You have a destiny.
As the crew leave, the blue spacesuit guy watches from a window. He removes his helmet to reveal an older version of Sinclair.
I tried to warn them, but it all happened just the way I remember it.
And he has Delenn by his side. Now, this episode blew people's minds when it first aired. It showed that many of the little nuggets of world building were actually setups that would be paid off later. It offered a glimpse of a bigger, more epic story that lay ahead. And most of all, it proved there was a plan. That this thing was plotted out far in advance, and they really were telling a story unlike anything we'd seen before on television.
Your commanding officer, Commander Sinclair, will not be returning to Babylon 5. He's being reassigned permanently.
And then the actor who played Commander Sinclair left the show. Now, it's hard to know exactly how this would have all played out if Michael O'Hare had stuck around. But there was a plan. Sometime after the pilot movie The Gathering aired, JMS had written an outline of where he saw it all going. Sinclair would have been part of a Minbari prophecy. The religious caste believe he'll help save their race, but the warrior caste fear he'll bring about their destruction.
Oh, it's a rebirth ceremony, all right. It also doubles as a marriage ceremony, depending on how seriously anyone took it. Somebody got married the other day.
Delenn becomes human, and she and Sinclair have a child, which will ultimately lead to a merging of the two species. The Shadow War happens, but the Shadows are more straight-up two-dimensional villains. There's nothing mentioned about the big themes of order versus conflict that end up being central to the story as it actually happened. In this early outline, the Vorlons get wiped out in Season 5, leaving our heroes to battle the darkness alone.
I greet you in the name of the warrior caste.
The series culminates with the Minbari warrior caste overthrowing the Grey Council and launching an attack on Babylon 5, which is what we see in that flash forward in Babylon Squared. And it all ends with the station being destroyed. And it's here where our heroes travel back in time and commandeer Babylon 4. They drag it forward in time, where it serves as the new base of operations in the fight against the Shadows. It's rechristened Babylon Prime, setting the stage for a second 5-year arc. Of course, none of this happened. Or at least, when it did, it happened very differently. JMS famously had what he called trapdoors built into his story, contingency plans for replacing key characters if any of the actors dropped out. Commander Sinclair was replaced by Captain Sheridan. Sheridan is now the one who ends up with Delenn, and leads the Alliance against the Shadows. But this was more than just a simple recasting. These were very different characters. Sinclair always had this reserved, distant demeanor. He had an almost priestly air to him.
Breathing in, breathing out.
He was a philosophical man, raised by Jesuits and fascinated by Zen Buddhism. He was a traumatized war veteran, a man haunted by survivor's guilt after his experience as a Star Fury pilot on the Battle of the Line.
The war gave them definition, direction, purpose. Without it, they don't know how to fit in anymore, so they keep looking for ways to go out in a blaze of glory.
He frequently puts himself in harm's way, perhaps seeking a righteous cause to die for. Sheridan, on the other hand, was a whole different fish. A celebrated war hero, a great tactician who's also not afraid of a straight-up confrontation.
I begin to understand what I don't understand about Babylon 5.
He's warm, charismatic, and affable.
I'll go living down below before I'll pay him a penny. And you can tell those bean counters that they can go to hell.
He's also a little bullheaded. He's got a real stubborn streak. And so, with a new lead character, the story moved on. But Babylon Squared had left a big dangling loose end. You could slot Sheridan in to fill Sinclair's role in a lot of the main story beats. But you can't change what we saw in Babylon Squared. Whatever happened to all this stuff about Sinclair's destiny?
Looks like I got here just in time.
Well, thankfully, the challenge of closing this story hole resulted in one of Babylon 5's best episodes. They were able to get O'Hare back for the two-parter War Without End, which folds all of this stuff back into continuity again. Everything we saw in Babylon Squared gets recontextualized, so it makes sense with the revised story arc. Just like in the original plan, it's the B5 crew that are responsible for commandeering Babylon 4.
Delenn, the question of who stole Babylon 4 is the biggest mystery of the last decade. Now you're telling me it was me?
But instead of the future, it needs to be taken into the past.
Our last great war against the Shadows was 1,000 years ago.
Delenn reveals that Babylon 4 appeared during the previous war with the Shadows, and helped turn the tide of battle. The flash forward we saw of B5 under attack is now reframed as a possible future.
Here it comes!
One that will come to pass if they fail their mission. Instead of the Minbari, it's now the Shadows attacking the station. They play around with the figure in the spacesuit. At various points, Sheridan, Delenn, and Sinclair all wear it. Sinclair is still the one, but now there are 3 ones, which rightly puts the current lead characters on the same level of importance.
You are the one who was. You are the one who is. You are the one who will be.
There are new flash forwards, but they're more careful with it this time. We see things that don't leave the show quite as much at the mercy of unforeseen circumstances.
Hello.
One takes place just a few episodes later.
Welcome back from the abyss, Sheridan. Just in time to die.
The other is decades in the future, well beyond the events that will take place in the show. They also do an admirable job smoothing over some of the more awkward fragments from Babylon Squared. Originally, Delenn's hand is on Sinclair's shoulder, since they were obviously planned to be a couple. This time, when they play out that scene again, we don't see that. It's less intimate. The clunkiest retcon is probably Sinclair's warning.
Garibaldi, do you read me? Watch your back, Michael. Watch your back.
This is now presented as an attempt to prevent Garibaldi getting shot in the back by his second-in-command at the end of Season 1. But it doesn't feel impactful, because, Garibaldi did recover after just a few episodes. But maybe if he wasn't shot, he could have prevented conspirators from assassinating President Santiago, which would have had a significant impact on how events played out. It kind of works if you squint at it a little bit. The final twist is that someone needs to go back in time with Babylon 4, and that someone is Sinclair. And the big reveal is that Sinclair becomes the legendary historical Minbari leader, Valen, the Minbari not born of Minbari.
And we have much work ahead of us.
Now, Valen wasn't really mentioned at all in Season 1, but ever since Sinclair's departure, they've been building this up, subtly dropping Valen's name offhandedly into conversations with growing frequency.
1,000 years ago, he came from nowhere and formed the Great Council and brought peace to our people. They say he was a Minbari, not born of Minbari. According to the
Another timeline here.
So when all this finally happens, it feels earned. It doesn't just come completely out of nowhere. It feels like it was part of the plan all along, even though it clearly wasn't. War Without End is probably one of the most successful retcons of all time. But it was also more than that. The Sinclair character disappeared very abruptly after Season 1. In this episode, they make a point of taking Sheridan out of the picture for a while, so Sinclair can take charge again one last time. A final chance to bid a proper farewell to Babylon 5's first commander. But what do you think? Could they have tied this up any better? Did Sinclair deserve his swan song? Let me know in the comments. That's all for this one. I'll be seeing you.